In March 2023, 3 major US banks were foreclosed, with one of them being a Silicon Valley bank. That is where majority of tech companies had their investments in. Now, what does that mean for us South Africans? And what did that have to do with the South African marketplace? 3 things. Firstly, the JSE saw instability in the US, so we took a tank. The JSE actually decreased a day or two afterwards. Secondly, we were at a 3-year low of economic stability. And lastly, we were downgraded by the S&P from stable to positive. Now, stable sounds to me like critical but stable. On today's episode, we're going to dive into the data of what would actually need to take place for South African banks to foreclose. Next to me, as always, Anna Marie Meyer.
Thank you so much.
Let's get into this episode. Right, let's get into the current climate and why the data, which we're going to present to you now, shows that we've got very little trust in our banking system. I want you to kick it off with why most South Africans choose informal borrowing, meaning outside of the banking industry rather than formal. And I want us to compare against Germany, who's number 1 when it comes to the trusting of the banking system.
It's absolutely about trust, as you say. Now, Germany, out of 80, they rated 75, where South Africa comes in on 7. So it's basically the worst that you can get. There's no trust in our banking system, so they rather would lend from any other place than the banking system.
So I want to go and reverse engineer the trust. Is it because there's no trust, or is it because it's very hard to access loans from the 4 major banks or 5 major banks? So we're going to get into that as well, because perhaps it's not only trust. Maybe the requirement, the bar is set too high, or the message is not communicated clearly enough, or perhaps it's the interest rate when you borrow that is not favorable. That's why people choose less hassle, and it's a much easier, more convenient way to borrow from. I mean, you can literally borrow on the internet within a couple of minutes and the money shows up in your card from an informal borrowing point.
I don't think it's only the one thing. It's difficult, it's accessible. You can go onto the internet with a banking institution and do exactly the same. But it's a total on how to do it. What do I need to do it? Do I have access to that? And I think it's the fact that our banking fees are so expensive.
So before we get into that, I want us to jump into the actual usage and the mistrust and the knowledge of a banking app.
But that was scary stats.
So I'm going to get into that. Fear of fraud. 33% of people that do have access to bank accounts, that use bank accounts, do not use an app. 33% of them. Fear of fraud.
Fear.
Okay, never occurred to me, 22%. So 22% of people, it never occurred to them to get a banking app. I mean, all the banks, this is a message to you. You are failing to educate the people on the accessibility of the banking app. You are failing, because if it never occurred to me, it means it's not constantly pushed.
And the banking app was made to make life easier and cheaper on the end user.
And more convenient.
Yes, more convenient and cheaper for the end user. So they don't need to go into the bank to do it.
100%.
And still they don't show the people what's available.
18% don't understand how to use it. So that's all on the banks. This is not on the end user, it's all on the banks. A failure to introduce training programs to push the service. Okay, data usage of 9%. That tells me that if you're worried about the couple of megabytes that you're going to use on your banking app, you're already on the breadline. So if you're going to be worried about data usage, 9%, it's very, very high. This is not 1%, it's 9%.
It's high.
It's very high because of data usage. Too expensive. 5 people say the banking apps are too expensive, and then 13% say something else other. So, I mean, the fact that this is not promoted in today's world, when we've got access to these, This is all on the banks. It's not on the end users, in
No,
my opinion.
I 100% agree with you.
Okay, let's get into the unaffordable banking fees. Hold on to your chairs because we're going to tell you where we rank in terms of banking fees on the world market. And we are a third world country. So banking fees on the world market. So now if we look into it, Brazil is the most expensive. Then we have Mexico, Colombia, Malaysia, and South Africa. But take a look at a first world country like Japan or China, or Canada, Argentina, Germany. They're all rating at 0, 0, 0, 0, and 1. So most of these transaction costs are covered by your monthly fee. We pay a monthly fee. We pay every time you swipe. You know, in our account, we had an off-camera discussion. It is extremely expensive, our banking fees. You know, we can employ 5 people.
Definitely.
We can employ 5 people if we took away the banking fees. So we can give work to 5 more people if we took away our banking fees.
But this, again, reverse engineer. This all came down to trust.
Yes.
If the people trust to lend from the bank rather than informal other places, then we will be on a 0 as well.
And on that note, so Boston Consulting Group ranked South Africa 149th out of 162 countries in its ability, listen nicely, in its ability to convert wealth into well-being. So that means, that tells me corruption. Because if you're going to invest your money, your wealth, into well-being, and you're ranking towards the bottom, your trust in the system, your trust in the government, your trust in the entire holistic system is extremely low. That money is going to disappear and it's going to be used for the wrong things. Is there a future for us? Hence, leading to massive immigration. I mean, 40,000 people in one day left the other day. I don't know what the day is, but 40,000 people left in one day, immigrated to countries that rank higher.
And this is again where it brings us back to the crime index ranking for South Africa. In 2022, we've been rated as the most dangerous country in Africa.
Most dangerous country in Africa.
Yes.
And there's civil unrest in countries in Africa. So, you know, as a final thought, can this happen in South Africa? I think yes. I heard a piece the other day where, you know, in a capitalistic world, you should be able to try, you should be able to succeed, and you should be able to fail. So unless we are able to fail, it's not a capitalistic world. I believe we are a capitalistic country. But why I'm doubtful is, why are we not pushing banking to the masses? Why is the trust so low? Perhaps the fees are too high. Who is holding these banks accountable? You know, a couple of minutes earlier, we said that we can employ 5 more people if we took away our company's banking fees.
We can get rid of poverty by one move.
Yes. So and it's not to take a jab at the bank where we bank. All of them are high. So there's not a single bank that can give us the service that we need, instant payments and all sorts of things that are not as high. Is there a authority or a governmental figure that comes in and says, wait a minute, we are ranking so low, we're a third world country, okay, we're stable, critical but stable. Why are we the 5th most expensive? How does Germany do it? Go and do a case study and say, hey, and I'm going to call them out, ABSA, FNB, Standard Bank, you know, who am I missing? Capitec, who am I missing? Nedbank. Put them around the table and say, how can you justify these fees, okay, versus these fees in a first world country? We need to have a difficult conversation, and it needs to start right now. And that way, I believe, it stimulates more trust, it's more affordable, and people will actually put their money in the banks. Then they'll do what's right with it and build up the trust. That's my point of view.
100% agree with you. Of course, we can make this work.
Absolutely. If you guys agree and you find our episode interesting, please leave us a comment, hit the like button,
and please subscribe to our channel and ring the bell.
Thank you very much. Take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.